Look, I'm a master of words, not a master of humility. Any one of these. Now that in itself is the first beneficial lie that I deliberately give you because you can hear no other. It's a riddle. If you can unfathom it, it's a bit like the Zen understanding. You can find suddenly you're in the presence of God. And it's not in the solving of the riddle. It's in the mind stopping in trying to handle the riddle. And you experience the presence of God in that moment. And what I'm saying is that any particular recording in itself can achieve that. And does. And it's that expectation, that possibility, the realization of such possibility, hope that comes in such reading, from such readings, such company of, that unlocks the whole vast panorama of heaven for you, for anyone. Thank you, Heavenly Father. You see, it's the apparent contradictions in life, the difficulties, the struggles, that give us the breakthrough. Suddenly we receive, as if from nowhere, something of God, an insight, an intuition. My view is, isn't it, that all thoughts are in fact from God. It's just that who we are predisposes what the access to God's mind is. And that access can be opened up in less than a moment of time to an infinity of the fullness of God. In that sense, I'm the Zen of Zen, aren't I? Or the hope of Christianity. You're just born again. It's not a case of developing towards, it's just wham. It's the economist's dream, isn't it? I'm an economist, you see, by training anyway. And the ideal is to achieve much with limited resources. Well, we have very limited resources it presents to us. But in fact, if you knew the nature of your personhood, it's awesome. It can only be compared to God because you are a child of God. And it is this hope. Where does that come from, this thought? That is unbelievably liberating. And I was going to say try it and see, but you're in it. You've no choice but to try it and see. You're already trying and seeing. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Thank you for your joy and your love and your presence and your goodness and for being our Father. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Hey, and I'm out of the slough of despond again, aren't I? I have practiced a different thing. This is not, well, it is praising God, isn't it? And thanking God in a way. But do you see, I've practiced simply recording my thoughts, drawing my mind back to God. I'm drawing on God's thoughts. I'm thinking. To think is to draw on God's thoughts. Don't think of them as your own. It's your choice of access, your choice of access that starts to open and the thoughts of God stream into you and you're back on your feet again. I am, just through recording. Do you see, if I never gave these recordings to anybody, didn't let anybody hear them, still they have been infinitely worthwhile. Thank you, wonderful God. Thank you, Heavenly Father. So you see, whatever practice puts you to the mind, in the mind of awareness of God and the features of God, the character of God, the thoughts of God, whatever brings you to considering God, to be aware of God, to know Him. That practice is life itself. Go for it. I find it's thanking God, I find it's dictating to, and I can also find it's worship. Church-type worship. I can find it's singing. I can find it's this purpose to love and care for someone. Whatever. Do it. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Well, let me give you a clue. The creation is said to have been spoken into existence. Even Jesus is the Word become flesh in the Christian understanding of things. And a riddle leaves you, before you can unfathom it, leaves you battling to open the mind to that which you hadn't thought of before but would perhaps solve the riddle. Humility is the realizing your lack and your need. Your consciousness is trying to make space to be filled with an understanding that it doesn't yet have. You have a volition, so to speak, to achieve something that's not achieved yet, which is the very foundation of creativity. And since God is the creator of all, you find you're standing at the gateway to heaven. You are, as it were, exercising your access to the person of God Himself. Whenever you're being creative, you're exercising a godliness. And by that I don't just mean you're doing something that has godly consequences. I mean that the act is godly. It is something of God to be creating, because you can only do it. The access to God's mind, because you're creating something that doesn't yet exist. And you've thought of it, and you think, that'd be a good idea. I wonder if that would work. It might be a different way of baking a cake, cleaning the house, different way of going to work, better way of driving, building a house. Could be anything, couldn't it? Any action that is creative. And really just about all of our actions are. Although those actions are not creative when it's just automatic repetition of previous, other than the intention to repeat is creative, because you're creating a habit and continue creating the continuation of a habit. But do you see, creativity is a majorly reliable, accepted feature of God. And words, before we made machines and recordings like this, can only come about by someone thinking the thought. Causing the vocal cords to act accordingly. Because we have recordings now where there's no person doing such. There has been in the past, and we're just left with the evidence of their creativity, namely the words. In other words, what they created. The word itself is a creative thing. It's been created by the thoughts. that chose to generate it, and the volition that was there to carry that through, to do it. So we find two people in conversation, their understanding actually grows. They each keep each other more or less to the point, hopefully, and they revolve round and round a certain issue, and they start to get more and more insight into what they're saying. They develop their ideas, and conversation with each other is so much easier than sitting down on your own thinking about it. And really I'm doing something halfway towards that here. I'm not in conversation with you, but I am, in some sense, picturing someone that I'm talking to, and that alone keeps me on track, helps me to. It's as if the very practice of putting words to the thoughts makes something concrete, something you can build upon that you couldn't build upon if you didn't actually speak it. And so you get this in church when, a lady prepares her testimony, and it's moving enough and it's very serious to her in her life, but when she actually comes to giving it and speaking it out in church, well, after congregations in tears, it's so real. Suddenly we've made something far greater than she simply had at home when she prepared the testimony, because now it's been spoken into existence, and it's in the minds, of course, and received in 1,000 different ways by 1,000 people in the congregation. But do you see, we're building something, and we speak. It's as if we speak it into existence. Before it was a thought, not a material existence. Where are my thoughts? Are they in the mind, or is the mind just picking up thoughts? Is the actual thinking process in my head, or is it externally in God's mind? Well, I don't know. Conjecture either way. But when we speak it, it's registered in the world, just like it's registered here on this dictation. Marshall said this at that time on the 11th of February 2021, sitting by the lake now in Hamilton, and it's 12:55 New Zealand daylight saving time, summer, just in the afternoon, sitting by the lake. Do you see, the thoughts have become registered in the phenomenal world, the material world, I mean. And, I've spoken it into being. And when we speak, we do. We speak the record into being, the witness into being. We are witness to what my thoughts are. And more than that, because I throw these thoughts out in the form of words, it's as if God speaks back to me and more thoughts come. And the flow of words, like now, may be prolific. But I couldn't honestly say where the thoughts come from or why they come. But they come much, much more clearly when I speak it out, in this case, into a dictaphone, so to speak, my mobile phone recording. So my presumed arrogance, lack of humility, if you like, is not valid. Because we are all master of words. Certainly anyone who can comprehend what I'm talking at the minute. And we are forever speaking some modification, some addition to creation, into practice, some reorganization of creation. We're forever speaking it out, planning it, talking about it.
bringing it to pass. And in a slightly different way, speech is only the evidence of thought. Even if it's in the past, like you listening to this dictation at the moment, it's evidence of my thought, or the thoughts that ran through me anyway. Speech, evidence is thought, and the evidence is the nearest you can get to any object. You know, I see this flower and these ducks on the lake, but I don't actually see them, I just receive the light that's reflecting off them. And I call that seeing them, but it's just the evidence that they're there. And that information that's coming in, that light that's hitting my eyes, tells me that they exist, but the light that's hitting my eyes is not of them. The light that's hitting my eyes probably came from the sun. Well, it does, no question of it. That's why I can see in daylight. But I take it as evidence. I say I can see the duck. I can see the flowers. Not strictly speaking true. I can see the light that's bouncing off what I hope to be them, what I think to be them. What seems to be the best explanation is that it's them over there, the flowers and the ducks. And so it is with words. Words are the nearest thing you can get to evidencing thought. It's the evidence of thought. Not strictly speaking, the thoughts themselves. But since thoughts are intangible, it's very hard to find a word that means what you want to say, namely thought. And therefore words are the next best thing, because they're the evidence of it. That's what you're actually handling. I'm only handling in my mind the evidence of the thoughts. And in a sense, the thoughts are what God's shining on me, on my mind. Now that's a new thought that's come into me, isn't it? God's shining it on my mind like light, and my mind makes this of it. It's conscious of this shower of thought that's coming in, and I respond by realizing it as a certain idea, recognizing it as a thought, and to remember it, I probably need to put words on it in my mind so that they are memory tags on what the thought was. You know, the best description I can remember of what I was thinking. Physical universe is simply a physical expression of God's thoughts. Physical manifestation. You can think of it as if he was shining his thoughts on a screen, and the screen shows this picture of creation. And we're semi-autonomous bits of the picture that can do likewise. We can pin on the picture changes. I could go and pick the flowers and put them beside me in my hand, on my lap. I can change the picture. I'm both part of the picture, and yet I have the same sovereignty of God. Only I'm exercising it in a very minor way, picking flowers. Whereas he can actually make flowers. Now that's quite an achievement, isn't it? From nothing, it's quite an achievement, yes, to say the least. Realize you're a master of words, and use your words in the most godly way you can. And you'll find that's an incredible blessing. I don't mean never criticize. There might be times when the criticism is invaluable help to someone, and they'll be able to hear it and be greatly blessed by hearing it. I don't mean never shout. There are emergencies when it's a very good idea to shout. A person might hear you and avoid imminent danger. Do you see, I'm not specifically defining, other than to say, your words are an incredible source of creativity in the material world, and you do well to keep those words well instructed and guided and led by an ever-present consciousness of the value of the goodness of God, your Heavenly Father. Yeah. Thank you, Heavenly Father.